gray or the long?
Both. Both.
Is it?
I have it. What do you have?
Yep. We're good.
Welcome. We would like to call to order the July 10th, 2023 regular meeting of the Willoughby-Eastlake City Schools Board of Education. This meeting is being held in accordance with Section 3313.15 of the Ohio Revised Code. Mr. Charnello, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Reedy?
Yes.
Mr. Roskis?
Here.
Mrs. Schatzman?
Here.
Mrs. Menser?
Here.
Mrs. Bear is absent. We do have a quorum.
Please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We would like to welcome everyone to our meeting this evening. To ensure all are aware of the way these meetings operate, we want to share the following. Prior to this evening, each board member has received for their review and consideration the agenda and materials associated with each agenda item for the board's approval. Board members can discuss the items with the superintendent and treasurer. Board members are not permitted per Ohio Meetings Act and Sunshine Laws to conduct conversations regarding board business outside of a public meeting. Tonight will be the first time the board can conduct conversations as a whole regarding the items on tonight's agenda. Board meeting agendas are always available through the district's website for public viewing prior to the board meeting. Community members can always email the board with questions or come and participate in the public comment portion of our meeting. Public comment provides an opportunity for the community to address the school board directly. In order to participate in public comments, participants would sign up before the meeting. When signing up, you are provided a copy of our public participation policy. Participants are asked to abide by those requirements. We will now move on to our agenda. Item 2A, do I hear a motion to approve our agenda?
Madam President, I make a motion to approve item 2A agenda.
Do I hear a second?
Madam President, I will second that motion.
Discussion? Mr. Charnello?
Mr. Reedy?
Yes.
Mr. Roskis?
Yes.
Mrs. Schatzman?
Yes.
Mrs. Menser?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Item 3A, Board President Q&A. We'd like to thank all of our speakers from last month for their public comments. Mr. and Mrs. Mara spoke about Attorney General Yost's recent legal opinion on transgender bathroom use and asked the board to reconsider policies related to that topic. The board regularly reviews policies in accordance with federal and state law. Item 3B, public comment. Do we have anyone this evening? Okay. Moving on to 4A, board discussion. I would like to just start by saying thank you to Mr. Murphy for stepping in as interim superintendent this past year. It's been a great help with all your knowledge, and this is your last meeting. We wish you well in your retirement. So I just wanted to say thank you, and we appreciate everything you've done.
Well, and I want to thank the board for this opportunity. It's been a tremendous learning experience for me and a most enjoyable one. And I actually met with Cabinet this morning, and we talked, and I thank them as well for everything that they have done and our entire staff. It's been a really special year, and what a perfect way to go out. So thank you for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have anything for board discussion?
I just wanted to provide a short update on the Community Advisory Committee. Mrs. Bear and I met with Dr. Ward a couple weeks ago and to work on further steps on the committee, and we will have Dr. Ward will have a detailed update and plan at the August board meeting.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I can do the legislative update if no one else has anything. I don't
Is
think
it
there
not
was
on
a,
here?
I don't think there was a separate item for it.
Okay, go ahead.
That's okay. Okay, so since our last meeting, as all of you know, there was lots going on in the House and Senate with the approval of the official operating budget for fiscal year '24 and '25. As you remember, Mr. Ciernello and I went down to testify about the House updates to the Fair School Funding Plan, which had actually updated the inputs to 2022 numbers. That still means, in terms of the funding of schools, that there's a share to be paid by local taxpayers and then a share by the state. So the question was, would they update it to 2022 costs, which was our most recent fiscal numbers that they had, versus the 2018 numbers when the formula was first started. When it went through the Senate, we were a little bit worried last month when I gave an update because the public school funding had gone down by just over $500 million. What had happened in that was they left the 2022 inputs, but they had actually changed the Fair School funding formula. And the way it worked out for us was it showed that we were locally wealthier than we were under the previous formula. And that was because they took out the median income calculation and just left it as an average. So that way, if we had huge outliers on one end or the other, it would skew the average. And for us, that made us look wealthier than we actually were. So our board and administration, especially Mr. Ciernello, did a great job, in my opinion, of advocating with our local representatives. So we wrote to Senator Serino, we talked on the phone with Representative Troy, and we also advocated to the Speaker of the House, as well as everyone who was on the conference committee between the House and the Senate, to advocate for why the Fair School funding formula, being in its original agreed-upon formula, was the right move for all public schools, not just Willoughby-Eastlake School. So I'm happy to report in the version of the budget that was signed by the governor, so it's actually official as of last Monday or Tuesday, I believe. So it's been just about a week now, that we will be getting the House version of the plan. So we're getting the 2022 inputs as well as the Fair School funding plan. So that is great for us because it's over $1 million a year difference between the two different versions. Now, again, that still means there's a local share, and still, unfortunately, out of the total cost for educating a student, it's a few $1,000s. I don't want to quote the exact figure. I'll let Mr. Ciernello do that. And it is also less than the amount that the state would give to a student taking a voucher to a non-public school. So it does benefit us. I just want to point out where some of the discrepancy was. So I know, Mr. Reedy, I think you were asking a question for more clarification, and happy to try to answer a little bit more, or let Mr. Ciernello take over with the financials. To kind of piggyback on that, one of the things that's notable about the budget is that they expanded vouchers. So there are now universal vouchers up to 450% of the poverty line, which works out to just about $140,000 a year for a family of four. Up to that, you will get the full voucher amount, which works out to somewhere around $6,000 for K through K through 5. And then middle and high school, it's somewhere just over $8,000 per student that they'll get from the state. Over that 450% of poverty, there's sort of different incremental levels where even someone making billions of dollars per year can still get 10% of that amount to take to a non-public school. So that doesn't necessarily come out of our direct bucket of money. It's not that Willoughby-Eastlake is paying out more dollars. I think the overall concern, and this is what I think all public schools and all taxpayers are going to keep an eye on, is there's only so much money that the state has from income taxes and whatever reserves that they have. And so if potentially $2 billion a year is going out in these sort of scholarships and vouchers, what's going to happen going forward? Are they going to be able to continue to phase in the Fair School funding plan as advertised? Are they going to need to change the formulas? Will they be able to keep up with inflation and keep updating the cost inputs? So that's something we need to keep our eye on and see. There were some other policy changes, notably SB1 was put into the budget, if you all remember, which is that ODE is being dissolved and we will now have a Department of Education and Workforce, also known as DEW or DO. So that'll have a governor-appointed head, and it'll have two separate branches. And the State Board of Education will lose some of its oversight. I watched their meeting. This has been their first meeting was today, and they have another meeting tomorrow since this bill went into effect. And so they're confused about what they're going to oversee and what the job of the state superintendent is going to be going forward. And there's also some confusion about the exact timeline. There's some language in there about taking effect 90 days, but it's 90 days from when the bill is filed with the Secretary of State. So potentially sometime in October, we could see that. There were also some questions that the state board was asking about vouchers and scholarships and how that's all going to work. And what was reported out to them was nothing's going to be posted online or any information available until at least July 17th. So a lot of these things are kind of wait to be seen. The House and Senate, there were some other bills that went through the House but did not get to the Senate yet before they went on their summer vacation. So they will be back in session in September, although I probably will have some updates as I get more information about some of these budget changes and what their implementation looks like, and I will keep you posted.
So they snuck SB1 into that?
Yes, the Senate placed it in there deliberately. And there were some other policy changes placed in there that the House, in conference committee, the House and Senate worked out and negotiated out, but some things did stay in there. There was at one point, they put back in the third grade reading guarantee, and that was one that got taken back out. But it's a little bit nuanced because now there's reading interventions that go along with it. So that, again, is one that the actual logistics of how these policies are going to play out in terms of administering them, I think we're waiting for exact news on how that's going to work. There's also something about transportation and how districts are held accountable. Our district will still be responsible for transporting any non-public student to the school that they choose to go to. That comes out of our budget. We need to figure out logistics to do that. And there will be certain penalties if we don't deliver all students to school on time, including the students who go to school outside of our district. So I think we have to wait on that as well. But I just want to end on a positive that I feel like in terms of the school funding, that was our number one priority because otherwise we've been forced to go back to taxpayers sooner to ask for more money. And coming off of the cycle we've been on, I think we are happy to try to get more money from the state rather than our local taxpayers. Thank you. Questions?
Just one more. Have they said when they're going to explain more how that's going to play out at the state level, since the state board's not going to be held accountable anymore? Have they said how they're going to explain that and work that out?
I think that's all a little bit, I would say, up in the air right now. They need to hire or like appoint. The governor's going to appoint people, but they've also set aside budgets for hiring the people who are going to head up the two factions of DEW. So I think details will be coming out in within the next few weeks, and we'll keep you all updated. But I don't know exactly. And Mr. Ciernello, if you've heard something more, you can feel free.
No, the only thing that goes into effect immediately is the operating budget. All of the other bills take 90 days to go into effect. So that gives them time to figure out what this looks like and to get all the pieces in place prior to that going into effect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Anyone else? Moving on to 5A, approval of minutes of June 12, 2023. Do I hear a motion to approve 5A?
Madam President, I make a motion to approve 5A, minutes of June 12, 2023.
Do I hear a second?
Madam President, I'll second motion for approving 5A, minutes of June 12th, 2023.
Discussion? Mr. Ciernello?
Mr. Reedy,
Yes.
Mr. Roskis,
Yes.
Mrs. Schatzman,
Yes.
Mrs. Menser,
Yes.
motion carries 4-0.
Mr. Ciernello? Treasurer's report?
Thank you. 6A is the monthly financials for the end of the fiscal year. And so I did a comparison to November of 2022. This is our first submission of the 5-year forecast. And our ending cash was able to exceed our estimates from November by $1.4 million. So I'm very happy about that. We did, as you'll see later in the agenda, need to make an additional advance to the 024 self-insurance fund. That was not expected. However, that just impacts the ending balance and will be moved back to the general fund in July or August of this year. And the estimates at year end are not the best indicators, like I said, so that's why I tried to compare to the 5-year forecast to see how well we are forecasting and meeting those targets. Our revenues came in $4 million higher. This is skewed just because of that renewal levy renewal levy we had in November. So it was expiring, and we did not have the updated certified numbers from the county on the Schedule A, as you cannot account for a renewal levy prior to it passing. Revenues were $2.5 million more than in November. However, $2.7 million of advances to the health insurance fund were not accounted for at that time. So that's what kind of accounts for a lot of that. And overall, I would think we were able to stick to our budget for the entire year, which is not always easily done when various things happen. Isn't that so, Mr. Murphy?
Very much so.
6B, these are the final appropriations for fiscal '23. This is the last budget, and this is based on where the actual numbers ended up on June 30th. 6C, this is to amend the budget for fiscal '24, effective July 1st, 2023. The primary changes were state and federal grant funds that, as the new allocations were loaded at the end of June and in place on July 1st. So that would allow us to appropriate or budget for these funds and spend those throughout the summer. 6D is petty cash. This is an annual item to establish the petty cash accounts for buildings. These purchases do still require proper documentation. They follow the school district's purchasing requirements, and all of the receipts and the excess cash must be turned in at the end of the year. So whatever cash is left over plus receipts need to be turned in at the end of every school year, and these funds are typically for emergency use. 6E, these are startup funds for the athletic departments for cash at the games. And I was almost going to remove this, and then the state budget actually now requires cash at school athletic events and all events. So for the time being, we're going to leave that in place until we figure out more, but we're going to see there's going to be some sort of implementation for cash with school events going forward. 6F, this is to set the hotel travel and meal per diem for the fiscal year. This is the same as last year. 6G, advance of general funds. This is the $1 million to the 024 health insurance fund that I mentioned during the financial portion. This is to ensure that we have an adequate level of cash in the reserve for the fiscal year per the Ohio Revised Code. And after an analysis, it was determined that we need to make a second advance. 6H, advance of general funds. This is an annual Ohio Revised Code requirement. No fund can end the year with a negative balance. These advances help us meet that requirement. Then we return the funds in July or August. These are still, the ones that are still negative have a project cash request in place, but that is something that the auditors look at and I have accounted for. Transfer to unfunded debt payments. This is for shortfalls in debt transfers in fiscal year 18 and 19. At that time, the Permanent Improvement Fund was not able to make the necessary transfer to the 002 Debt Retirement Fund. As a result, the account went negative as the payments were still made. And during the time, the district did not have the general fund dollars required to make the transfer on its behalf, as we were fighting for a new money issue at that time. And we are now in a position where the Permanent Improvement Fund can transfer the funds into the debt retirement account. And we will be looking at another transfer in each of the next 2 years, as the balance is now negative $970,000. Unclaimed funds. These are checks that have not been cashed between the months of March 2022 and February of 2023. Transfer to grant funds to grant funds in fiscal year 2023. These were state grant funds that ended the year with a cash balance, and they needed to be consolidated and moved to fiscal 2023, as there were multiple accounts just with different fiscal years. Termination of benefits, this was accounted for in the 5-year forecast. This is a fiscal 24 item. The 035 fund pays for the severance for qualifying retirees. 6M, permanent improvement fund transfer. This is also accounted for in the 5-year forecast for fiscal 24. After reviewing the debt obligations and the capital improvement needs of the district, the permanent improvement fund can no longer support itself, and the general fund needs to assist with some of those obligations.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So in terms of the permanent improvement fund, what would be our options for having it support itself?
That would require an additional permanent improvement levy. So that would require probably another 1 or 2 mil permanent improvement levy to properly support the buildings, technology, security, debt payments of the district.
Thanks.
6N, purchase orders. These are POs that either ran out of the necessary funds at the end of the fiscal year or had to create a new PO or had a new PO created and had a date, an invoice date that was prior to that purchase order. And then lastly, student activities. These are to establish the budget and purpose and goals for all these activities for fiscal 24. Funds cannot be spent by an activity account if they are not budgeted for and or if they do not agree with the budget purpose and goals of the group. As you can see, there are quite a few, but that is to be expected for the first go-around for fiscal 24.
Item 7, Mr. Murphy.
Okay, item A for your consideration are special services agreements. These agreements are with outside agencies for student services. 3 of the agreements impact our special needs students directly. These are ones with the Medicare's program, the Education Alternatives, and LLA. These are for services that we either cannot provide in-house or it is more cost-effective for us to seek outside assistance. You will also see an agreement with the Educational Service Center Northeast Ohio. This agreement is for some audiology services provided to our students. And finally, the agreement with PSI is for services provided in our school clinics. These contracts generally appear on the board agenda once a year because they must be renewed annually. These items align with the strategic plan in areas of academic excellence and student wellness, and they allow us to deliver a high-quality education to students and to provide the necessary supports that students need to access their education. I'd also like to thank Heather Dodd for working so hard to put these agreements in place. Item B for your consideration are the 2023-24 school year school fees. Each year, the fees that are paid by students for extra materials and supplies are presented to the board for their approval. This is the list of fees that will be incurred next school year. When the fee schedule is created and items used in the classrooms are selected, our staff members do as much as possible to keep fees at a minimum. For some items though, like headphones or workbooks, these are consumable and will be used by individual students. These are the items that we ask families to pay for with respect to their child's education. This item aligns with the district's strategic plan under operations and fiscal responsibility and allows us to manage assets efficiently and effectively.
Mr. Murphy, what
Yes.
happens if a family cannot afford the school fees? What is our practice?
They would be able to get either free or reduced fees in accordance with where they fall through the lunch program. So how they qualify for that, they would qualify for this as well.
Gotcha, thank you.
Item C for your consideration is the 2023-24 co-curricular fees. Each year, the fees that are paid by students for participation in extracurricular activities are presented to the board for their approval. This is a list of fees that will be charged in the upcoming school year. As you can see, the fee schedule varies from sport to sport and is also graduated so that all students have the best possible opportunity to participate in the activities of their choosing. This item aligns with the district's strategic plan under operations and fiscal responsibility and allows us to manage assets efficiently and effectively. Item D for your consideration is the administrators and adult nursing instructors' salary schedules for the 23-24 school year. This item is an update to the salary schedules of these staff members. It reflects the same increase that union members receive for the 2022-23 or 23-24 school year. This aligns with the district strategic plan under operations and fiscal responsibility and allows us to manage assets efficiently and effectively. In addition to this, maintaining competitive and fair salary schedules allow us to recruit, retain, and advance high-quality employees to maintain a high-quality workforce.
Do I hear a motion to approve 7D administrators and adult nursing instructors' salary schedules for 2023-2024?
Madam President, I will make a motion to approve item 7D, administrators and adult nursing instructors' salary schedules for 2023 and 2024.
Do I hear a second?
Madam President, I second 7D administrators and adult nursing instruction salary schedules for 23-24.
Discussion? Mr. Tarnello?
Mrs. Schatzman,
Yes.
Mrs. Menser,
Yes.
Mr. Roskis,
Yes.
Mr. Eady.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
So go along with item D is item E, our administrative and exempt employee compensation plan and schedule of benefits. This item is in reference to any additional compensation that administrators and exempt employees receive in addition to their salary. It is presented to the board each year for their approval. You will see that some sections, such as insurance, align directly with contractual agreements with our unions. This aligns with the district's strategic plan under operations and fiscal responsibility and allows us to manage assets efficiently and effectively. In addition to this, maintaining competitive and fair salary schedules and benefits allow us to recruit, retain, and advance high-quality employees to maintain a high-quality workforce.
Do I hear a motion to approve 7E administrative and exempt employee compensation plan and schedule of benefits?
Madam President, I vote to approve 7E administrative and exempt employee compensation plan and schedule of benefits.
Do I hear a second?
Madam President, I second 7E.
Discussion? Mr. Tarnello?
Mr. Roskis,
Yes.
Mrs. Menser,
Yes.
Mr. Eady,
Yes.
Mrs. Schatzman.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Mr. Murphy?
All right, item 8, the personnel agenda. You will see in this month's agenda, we have several new administrative positions that are being filled. In recent months, we've experienced several retirements. I'd like to thank those that have retired and welcome our new employees as well. This is an exciting time for the Willoughby-Eastlake City Schools, and I know that our new employees will help take the district to new levels of excellence. Our staff works very hard to find and work through the hiring process, and I do want to thank our whole administrative team for what they do to work through that process. This item aligns with our strategic plan under operations, safety, and fiscal responsibility and collaboration. It ensures that we are working to manage available financial resources and assets efficiently and recruiting high-quality employees to maintain a high-quality workforce. And that kind of goes for
All of them?
all of them, yes.
Okay. Moving on to item 9A, meeting notification. The next regular Board of Education meeting is scheduled for Monday, August 14th, 2023 at 7 p.m. at 35353 Curtis Boulevard in Eastlake. Item 10A, adoption of consent calendar. Do I hear a motion to approve 10A?
Madam President, I make a motion to approve 10A consent calendar.
Do I hear a second?
Madam President, I will second that motion.
Discussion? Mr. Tornello?
Mr. Eady,
Yes.
Mr. Roskis,
Yes.
Mrs. Schatzman,
Yes.
Mrs. Menser.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Item 11A, adjournment. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Madam President, I make a motion that we adjourn.
Do I hear a second?
Madam President, I second the motion to adjourn.
Discussion? Mr. Tornello?
Mr. Eady,
Yes.
Mr. Roskis,
Yes.
Mrs. Schatzman,
Yes.
Mrs. Menser.
Yes.
We are adjourned at 7.